It is Friday, and what does that mean? Friday fish and chips, noontime. So this one is going to be about questing in your life. Stay tuned. Okay, so I'm going to set off to the neighborhood restaurant, and I want to talk while we're walking. I want to talk about questing in your life, like I said, and what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm gonna do two things in this vlog. First, I'm going to talk about questing in your life, and I'm also going to give you an example of a quest in my life. At the time, I didn't realize it was a quest, but you might find it interesting. And this is a little bit of a repetition. I mean, if you really poke through my stuff on the website, well, actually, one of my other websites, not the stormthecastle.com website, if you poke through all my stuff, and some people do, dig up these little gems, this story, I've told this story before, but I thought it was worth telling here on YouTube. And I'm going to actually pop in some pictures and stuff to help you along with this. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And you don't, right now you don't even know what I'm talking about. All right. First, let's talk about questing in your life. You know, people have, perspectives in their life, right? And one common thing is, the glass is half empty and the glass is half full, right? You might be a glass half empty person or a glass half full person. But that's kind of simplistic, Some people perceive life as a game to play, and that particularly happens a lot with money. It's like a game for some people. But how you perceive your life is, it's kind of it's important. And I had a series of events happen to me that I'm just living my life, and nothing serious. I'm not talking about maybe serious, but. And I never really, I just kind of lived my life and did my things and did some stuff and didn't realize that maybe actually it was on a quest. Yeah, and that's a perspective that you might want to take a look at it sometimes in your life, because it also I think helps to to get to where you want to go. If you step back and you say, hey, maybe you're having difficulties in your life or you're facing particular challenges, you might be able to step back and say, well, you know what, I'm on a quest here. And just like in a video game, I mean, where do we get video games from? We get them from our experiences in life, right? And, you might talk to the local tavern owner who tells you that he needs, a sack of potatoes, and you have to go to the potato farmer and get the sack of potatoes. But the potato farmer says, well, I need a rake. I can't get the potatoes without a rake, so you have to get the rake. And that's, this is wonderful. I love quests in these medieval video games. And so doesn't that seem like sometimes that happens in your life? Really? And if you look at it from that perspective, even though sometimes the things are challenging, right? You can actually turn it into a quest and what it really means. What's really going on here? Why are you being challenged in this way, and why are these obstacles put in your way? And why, what are you going to benefit in terms of not just financially, but in terms of who you are as a person? And I think that's interesting. So, consider that. And so now let me tell you a little bit about a quest in my life that I didn't even realize was a kind of like that way. I took a trip to Japan several years back, and I had several things I wanted to accomplish while I was there, and one of them was I wanted to actually buy a katana, a samurai sword, while I was there. I wanted to get one in Japan, and that way I could display it and say, yeah, I bought that while I was on a trip to Japan. And I love swords, so and I've always been a fan of the Japanese martial arts, and so that was my thing. I was going to get myself a sword. And it's interesting because the Japanese are kind of skittish about their swords. You know, it's a big thing for them because, you know, at the end of World War II, you know, we confiscated all their swords, as many of them as we could get, and it was a lot of them. So now they're skittish about giving them out or giving them away or selling them, or, you know, they don't. They're a national treasure for the Japanese, and they're right. They are a national treasure. So there's a little bit of skittishness there when it comes to outsiders coming into the country and getting swords. And you know, and I don't disagree with that. I think there's some validity in that. Well, anyway, so I'm in Japan, and I'm talking to all kinds of people. I'm even talking to people on the street saying, hey, where the heck do I buy a sword? You know, and, you know, people were telling me and pointing me towards these shops, which are nice, but these, you know, these kinds of places that, you know, are for tourists. And they sell swords. You can get one of some nice katana for, you know, I don't know, $300, $500 or something, or less. But I don't know. It just wasn't. It was just too commercial and consumeristic, you know. So I kept talking to people, and I was kind of stumped. I was in. At the point I was at that time, I started out in Okinawa, and I spent a week on that island, and then I flew to Tokyo, and there I continued, you know. And there were more shops that, you know, kind of like were souvenir shops, but nicer. Not really like they weren't selling, you know, junk, but I wanted a better experience and a better sword. So I was stumped. I couldn't find anyone. I even remember spotting these bunch of teenagers in the parking lot of a mall, and I walked right up to them and I said, hey, you know, what's the deal with the samurai swords and the Japanese katanas? Where can I actually get a real one? And they were like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you have to talk to the Yakuza, right? Which is the fabled or the mythical Japanese mafia. Well, my quest continued. Now I'm going to call it a quest, because it kind of is a quest. But I want to tell you now. Let me go back a little bit. To get to Japan was an ordeal for me. You know, it was in terms of. I think it took about. I flew out of. How did I fly? I think I flew Boston to New York, and then New York to maybe. I think Paris or Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Japan, Tokyo, and then Tokyo to Okinawa. It was a whole thing. The whole thing took like 26 hours, so it was a lot of travel, and so I was exhausted. But when I finally got there, finally was done and arrived at my destination, I was you know, grateful and happy and tired as all heck, but I went outside to look at the stars, which is something I try to do whenever I travel. And there in the sky was the moon. It was full. And I watched a cloud formation, and this is a true story. I'm not making this up. I watched a cloud that was shaped like a dragon with an open mouth. And I watched it slowly move and swallow the moon. Really. I'm not one. I should have took a picture. I didn't have my camera with me. I was shocked. And, you know, and I was, I think, open to this because I was so exhausted, you know, but wow, that was my first night in Japan. Well, anyway, let's fast forward now. So now I'm in Tokyo. And I was sightseeing too. I wasn't just, you know, trying to track down a sword. You know, I was sightseeing and doing different things. And I was on this one tour bus. And we had a tour guide. It was like a half-day trip or something somewhere. I forget even where. One of the castles, maybe, you know, Himeji or Shuri Castle or something. One of the castles in Japan. And the tour guide was very fluent in English and Japanese. And so I just, at one point during the trip, I just went up to her and said, hey, I want to, like, buy a real, you know, katana, a real samurai sword. Where can I get one? And she looked at me and paused for a second, and she said, I know exactly where to go. She said, there's this little shop in Kyoto, which is on the other side of Japan. It's actually a long trip by the super train. And she said, so she drew me a little map. She grabbed a piece of paper and she drew a little map. And she said, here's the castle in Kyoto. Here's this street. Here's that street. And here's the shop right here. She pointed to it. That's where you go. That's the place you're going to find. So I thought to myself, gee, wow. If we go back to my thought about a quest, and so, what happens to you in your life when you're on a quest? Well, a couple of things. First off, you get intuitions and signs, or you want to call them signs, whatever you want to call them. And that's what happened to me with the dragon swallowing the moon, right? And second of all, people will come to your aid in your quest. You will, like they say, doors will open. Stay true to what you're trying to do. Stay strong and just keep moving forward no matter how difficult it is, and people will come to your aid. So, after a few days in Tokyo doing my sightseeing, I took the bullet train, which is an experience all in itself. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. Right across Japan to Kyoto, Japan. And I went to the shop, got maps, went to the shop, and sure enough, there it was. And I was there. I arrived, what time was it? It was like 5 minutes after closing. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I got to get a hotel. So I got a hotel room, and I returned the next day. And the funny thing about it is, I walked in that shop, and they had a lot of beautiful samurai swords. Well, anyway, I spotted one right away, and it was on the sheath of the sword, the wooden sheath, that you put the sword into. It had a beautiful golden drawing, painting of a dragon and a moon. And just like that, I knew I had found the sword. It's interesting. This is life. This is if you're open to just the experiences of life. Well, there you go. Kind of like you can almost say magical things happen, and it isn't. This isn't a video game. This is your life, but there's these wonderful things that they can reveal themselves. So anyway, I bought that sword, and I have it today. I keep it on my piano, and I'll pop in a picture or a video for you, and I'll see if I can in the rest of this video. Let me see if I can track down some pictures so you can kind of see the experience I had. The bullet train and a little bit of Tokyo, a little bit of Japan, and the funny thing about that sword is I couldn't take it with me. It had to pass customs, which takes some time. There's a special handling that has to go on with some things. So they packaged it up and shipped it to me, and I forget how long it took, but a few weeks later it arrived through customs, and I received it in my home, which was just kind of nice. It was so this whole thing, and the funny thing about this is that this whole trip, this whole thing derived from an incident that happened in my life where I had something happen that was I guess you could say a critical thing happened in my life that set me on a quest, and then there you go. So that's pretty much all of today's Friday Fish and Chips, and I thought you'd enjoy that story because it's it might help you to take a look at your life and say, hey, what are the intuitions that I'm being given here? Who are the people that are trying to help me in my life? Who are the little NPCs? Who are the NPCs in my life here that are giving me advice and tips and helps and hints and guiding me to fight the good fight and keep moving forward, right? And that's fun, and as life should be, even though there's challenges and all of this stuff, it's a lot of fun. So be sensitive to quests in your life, and remember, it's all about life, adventure, creativity, and never losing that sense of wonder.